Hey, and welcome back to the channel. This week I have been deep in grant writing mode, working on a proposal. I think I've mentioned that previously. I've also had a few of my coaching clients ask me some questions related to selecting a journal where they can submit an article they're working on. So I thought today I would start with discussing how to find a journal to submit your article to. And after I have talked about that a bit, I would give you an update on my grant writing process and what I have learned lately in that process. So to figure out where to publish your article, the first thing is not to just submit to any old journal, because if it's not a good fit, it's going to be an automatic rejection, and you don't want to waste your time in that way. First, I recommend that you take a look at what journals you're reading regularly. If you're not currently reading any journals, I recommend that you form a habit of reading some articles in your field every now and then. You don't have to read them in depth. You can skim, but just regularly every week or so or every couple of months, take a look at some articles that are being published on your topic. Another idea is to take a look at the article that you're typing and look at who you have cited. Take a look at your reference list in your article or another article that you've read lately that was on point for your topic. And as you look through those reference lists, take note of the journals that are being cited in that reference list. That is what I would say as the first step as a possible place to look for journals to publish in. After you have that list of possibilities, I encourage you to go to the website for each of those journals. As you look at their website, you'll find information about their scope and their aims, the mission or purpose of that journal. So take a look at that information, and I encourage you to go ahead and create a spreadsheet or a database with that information so that you can keep track of it all, and you don't have to look up that same information again later about the same journal, but you can add new journals to that list when you're selecting for your next publication. So you'll want to write down what kinds of topics are in that journal, specific methodology that the journal focuses on, and of course, like I mentioned, the audience who reads it, and so forth. If you feel that it might be a good match for this project or another project, then I recommend that you take a look at 2 or 3 back issues of the journal and just kind of skim through them, take a look at kind of what's being published in that venue. And then if it still looks like a good fit, pick 2 or 3 articles from each of those issues and read them more closely. You don't have to read them in super detail, but take a look at the methods, who you think the specific audience is of that very specific article, who the authors are, what approach they take to their research, and so forth. And again, you're going to be putting these notes in your spreadsheet or your database. Those are my ideas for figuring out where you might want to publish. For example, if you realize that every article in a journal is quantitative and your article you're working on is qualitative, then it's not a good fit for that journal, and it's likely to cause an automatic rejection. Or if they do send it out to reviewers, there'll probably be really negative reviews because it doesn't fit the general conceptual framework of that journal. Once you have the journals, you can rank order them like first, second, or third for the specific article that you're working on, like which one you think would be the best fit. And then if it doesn't get accepted there, what would be the next best fit, and so forth. Then when it's time to submit, remember you looked closely at a couple of articles. So I recommend really analyzing those articles, for example, the type of headings they use and the general structure of the articles. And then also take a look at the author guidelines that'll be provided on the website. Read those very carefully and be sure that you follow them to the letter, exactly match their guidelines before submitting an article to that journal. Now, usually when you submit, the managing editor will decide if that article is good enough to be sent out for reviewers. And if they decide it's not, that's called a desk rejection. It's an automatic rejection based on not meeting the scope of the journal or the standards. So of course you might get that rejection, or they might send it back to reviewers, and then if the evaluations are negative, it might be rejected, or they might give you a revise and resubmit option. If they give it back to you and it's a rejection, don't feel too bad. Just go ahead and move down to that second journal on your list. Remember, you rank ordered them. You might make some tweaks, and of course you'll need to fit the formatting for the new journal, but just go ahead and make those changes for the margins and style and so forth. Make those changes to fit the new journal and submit it there. One of my colleagues, maybe last fall sometime, had an article and the journal required APA, and my colleague said, I've got it, it's APA, great. And they submitted it, and it was an automatic desk rejection because they said that she didn't follow APA. They didn't even read it. They just looked and saw what they thought was not APA, and they rejected it. So really follow those in detail. And then you can submit to a different article if you need to. Sometimes they'll give you feedback and you will revise it and submit it to a different article. And in other times you can submit it to the same journal again. That's called an R&R, or revise and resubmit. That means that you'll give it back to them. It's not a guarantee that it'll be accepted for publication there, but they will look at it to determine if the revisions are satisfactory and if it can be accepted. So again, you can resubmit or submit to a different journal and hopefully eventually get it published. If you are getting automatic or quick rejections for the same article multiple places, then you might want to reach out to a colleague and ask them if there's a better place to submit that article. You can also reach out to your university librarian and ask them to help you find some journals that might be a good fit. Usually if you give them the topic and the type of work that you've done in that article, they can help you find some journals. There's never just one right journal option for your article, so it's up to you to decide where you're going to submit it first. Hopefully you won't need that second and third option, but if you do, you have that backup plan ready and you can just submit it to that next one on the list. If you have any additional questions about publishing scholarly articles, let me know. But for now, I thought I would just turn to a quick update on my grant writing process. So I am applying for a kind of a large grant for my field. And previously, when I worked at a different university, I had a 4-4 teaching load, which was quite significant. And I was asking the grant to buy out one of my courses for reassigned time so that my institution could hire someone else to teach that course for me. That was included in my grant budget. And I assumed that the same process would work here at this institution where I am now. So I wrote out a draft budget and I sent it to the grant person in my university. And I couldn't see what the person's actual tone of voice was because they typed me a message and they said 20% plus summer salary. And that made me pause and I wondered, was something wrong? But, I assumed that I should write down the amount of time that I plan to spend on the grant during my regular academic year plus any summer salary. And that, that would save the university a bit of money. They wouldn't have to pay part of my salary during the year because it would be grant funded. So I thought that's how things work. But then when I got that response back from the grant person, they didn't say this is wrong, but it made me wonder if maybe I was doing something a little different than what was expected. I went to my department chair and asked him. Now, at this institution, I have a 2-3 or a 2-2 course load, so I really don't need course reassigned time. I was just putting in money in the budget to pay for my research time. And my chair was like, well, summer salary, of course you can put in there, but if you don't need course reassigned time, then what would be the purpose of putting down research time in the grant, for the grant to pay for that? Since I had kind of that answer and I still just wanted additional information from other people, I posted in a Tenure Track Moms Facebook group and asked them about research time. Do you put in the grant if you need a course release or even if you don't need a course release? And the answers to that question surprised me. About 80% of them agreed with what the information I've gotten kind of in my department currently, which is unless you're asking for a course release, you don't put just your research time in there. And then about 20% of the respondents said, yeah, go ahead and put your research time during the academic year as well as summer salary if you need it. So what I learned is there is not one way to do it. There are differences by department, by institution, maybe by the field, by the grantor, the place the money is coming from. So that was interesting for me to learn again. And the grant I'm applying for has different funding levels for this specific budget, for this specific grant opportunity. And I wanted my budget to match the lowest tier. And I thought it would be easy to fit into that category by including part of my salary for the academic year. But if I'm not including that percentage of my salary from the academic year, that means my budget is much lower. And at the moment, it doesn't equate to the lowest tier of that grant program. So I might need to switch and apply for a smaller grant or change the scope of my project slightly to be slightly broader scope to include additional summer work and undergraduate or research assistant or graduate research assistants on that budget. I just thought I'd let you know that that's what I learned this week. There's really difference in how that's approached, so you might need to ask around. It's okay to not know everything. Just go ahead and ask questions, and I'm still learning things every day. If you have other questions about my process or other things I'm working on, feel free to put them below. I'm always happy to see your questions and comments below. Also, if you like the video, like and subscribe. And of course, obviously, I don't know everything, but I am really committed to supporting faculty in their success, no matter where they're starting, if it's just from the beginning or they've already published lots of articles and they know how to handle this faculty life. If you'd like to know more about how we could work together and how coaching can help you succeed in your academic job life, feel free to check out my website. The link is below, but KimberlyJHale.com. And I'd be happy to chat with you to see how we might work together.